And now, Understanding the Times with Jan Markell, the program committed to helping you contend for the faith and view current events through the lens of the Bible. Here's Jan Markell.
Welcome to the broadcast, everyone, coming to you from the late, great state, no, not really, the beautiful state of Minnesota, where we headquarter out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we look at news, views, and truths. And we try to be, well, we try to help you look at troubled times, and we try to calm you through perilous times and remind you that God is in control of everything. Now, if you have a loved one in your life that you are trying to win to the Lord and you're kind of discouraged about it because not much is happening, then please don't get out of your car or turn off the dial right now, because I think where you're about to hear is going to encourage you, particularly those of you who have those kinds of loved ones who aren't responding real well to the gospel. Let me say this about my guest this hour. Her name is Kitty Foth-Regner, and her book is Heaven Without Her, and this is a true story that she has written, because Kitty, until 2000, was living the life she wanted to, and I'll tell you what that is. She was an ardent feminist atheist, and she had a good life. That's all she ever wanted. Actually, she had most of what she wanted, but then something happened. When she'd learned that her very precious and beloved mother had a terminal illness, Kitty was going to have to watch her mother succumb to death. And at that time, her heart was stirred with questions about eternity. Was there something to her mother's Christian faith? Or was that faith really nothing more than delusions? But she was haunted because she might never see this beloved mother of hers again after she died. And so she began a spiritual journey. And we're going to talk about that spiritual journey here in the next few minutes. I want to welcome to Understanding the Times Kitty Regner Foth. You wish with me, Kitty?
I'm here. Hi, Jan. Nice. I'm so happy to be with you this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate your coming on air with me. I've gone through most of your book, Kitty, and you and I have talked as well. Mm-hmm. And you've been doing some of the talk show circuit, and very, very moving story, because I think every human being has to go through this at one time or another, and that is lose someone that is very, very near and dear to them. And as a matter of fact, you and I talked that your story and mine has some similarities, except right. I wasn't an ardent feminist atheist. I promise you that.
You believed in heaven.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning, because again, here you are, a feminist. I think your Bible was Gloria Steinem's book, which was, I don't even remember the name of the book. What was her book?
Actually, it was Betty Friedan.
Yeah, Betty Friedan.
The book was The Feminine Mystique.
The Feminine Mystique. That was your guide to living.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, your mother gets struck with this inoperable terminal cancer, and I was kind of wanted to ask you. I mean, you had this very close relationship with your mother. You bring this out all the time, how close the two of you were. Mm-hmm. So was she not trying to share the gospel with you, to get you out of the lifestyle that you were in? Or did she just assume that it wasn't going to do any good? And besides, you kind of wanted to change the subject when she started on things like that anyway.
Right, I did just change the subject. She talked to me about God and Jesus all the time, but mm-hmm. I would just change the subject or walk away, and made it clear that I was just not interested in that. You know, that it was fine for her, but it it had no interest for me. So I think, well, I'm sure she was just praying for me.
Yes,
like crazy the whole time.
Right. Now, obviously, she was perishing in front of your eyes. So did you not stop to think about an afterlife? I mean, I know you were going to eventually, but as you saw her begin to weaken, did you not start to think about an afterlife?
Oh, yeah, it all happened very quickly, actually.
Okay.
It was in, over a period of a couple weeks when she came up with this diagnosis, or she didn't come up with it, when the doctors told me that she didn't have more than 6 months or so to live, and within 10 days she was gone. So Yeah, I mean, I did start to think about it, and I had over the years used my considerable intellect, to think about heaven now and then, because I had lost my father when I was 17. He died of a heart attack, so of course it crossed my mind. But my heaven was nothing like the Christian heaven. It was like Alice in Wonderland, filled with talking animals and kind of kooky but benign characters, or it was like that Robin Williams movie. What Dreams May Come, a beautiful place just dripping in color and totally God-free, and you get into it by acknowledging that you have died. Or sometimes I would believe in reincarnation, and then I would think, I'm going to come back as a well-loved family dog. Like somehow you got to decide what you came back as. Well, so I just had these dumb ideas.
Yeah, you kind of felt anyway that Christians were pretty boring, and you thought, well, even Buddhists probably have more fun than Christians do. But nonetheless, and as Kitty outlines in her book, Heaven Without Her, and the subtitle, A Desperate Daughter's Search for the Heart of Her Mother's Faith. So you felt that Christians were pretty boring. And again, you wanted to hang on to your success, and you wanted your entertainment, and you wanted Betty Friedan and everything that Betty had to offer her. And then your mother goes into a sort of a morphine coma and says, and I think you say to her, I'll see you there, Mom. But what was there to you?
I didn't have a clue. Those are the last words I said to her, I'll see you there, Mom. And I didn't know what I meant, but at that point I thought, I'd better find out if there could be any truth to this afterlife business.
Okay.
Yeah, so...
All right, so you decided you're gonna set out on a little journey here, an exploration. And
I did. And I'm a freelance copywriter, so I did as little work as possible for the next year and a half or so. I would just accept what came in over the transom, but I didn't try to push it at all. And instead, I spent my time investigating. And I was starting from ground zero. I did not even believe that there was a God necessarily. So I set out to prove, number one, is there a God? And number two, if so, which God is the real deal? And number three, if I could figure those things out, what exactly did he or she want of me in order to let me into the same heaven that my mother was in? So it was a journey that took me well over a year.
Yeah, that's about 15 months that you went on this journey, and you investigated many religions. I think you used a book that helped you with the various religions. I think it was, it was a Prominent Religions and Their Worldview.
Right.
And so you kind of followed that as a guide, and you investigated these religions and which ones, and how many did you investigate?
Oh, well, I looked at just about all the big ones and some of the smaller ones too. But first of all, I had to prove that there was a God. And that actually, because I'm kind of a high-tech writer, I read and write about the things of science, and I have an interest in them. And it's like, man, the whole way through this journey, the Holy Spirit accepted that I was a doubting Thomasina and just kept pointing me in the directions of the where he knew the proof would be that I needed. And he tossed me, first of all, right into the middle of the origins debate, that is about the origins of the universe. And I was amazed to find out that when you clear away all of the rubble, that actually there are only two possibilities, either special creation, which would imply an intelligent designer, or the time plus chance scenario of evolution. And what really cracked that case open for me was a book called God, the Evidence by Patrick Glenn, in which he talks about this anthropic principle, which says that every variable in the universe is totally fine-tuned to allow life. If you just tweaked any of those variables, life would not be possible. And that sent me down the whole path of intelligent design. And I'd say after a month or two of reading those books, I was convinced that, whoa, there is a God.
Okay.
There is a creator God. Okay, now I'm at the point where, now which one? That was a tougher question.
All right. All right, so you found that the religions, because you looked at so many of them, and they contradicted each other, and obviously you concluded they can't all be true. And I think that you found that many of them suggested that you had to be a good person. In other words, works would be very important.
Absolutely.
So after a year of investigation, or actually maybe even 15 months, you were, surprise, you were finally convinced that biblical Christianity really could be an option.
Yeah. Well, the book you mentioned earlier, I think you were referring to James Sire's The Universe Next Door.
Mm-hmm.
It's subtitled A Basic Worldview Catalog. And I came across that book very early in my the Witch God segments of my investigation. And what Sire does is he provides an overview of the basic tenets of each of the major worldviews, from Hinduism to existentialism to nihilism, all of that sort of thing. And so I got a good overview of what these religions teach. And I saw that two things. Number one, that they contradict each other, which was amazing. If they contradict each other, they can't all be true, right? And I found that, some say that there are many gods. Some say that there's no God. Some say that you are God.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
That's the most popular one these days, huh? And then, of course, there are the few that say that there's only one God. And I also saw that most of them have one thing in common, and that's what you referred to about the works, that they say that what matters in this life is being a good person, except for Christianity, which says that what matters in this life is Jesus. So that kind of allowed me to sort of wrap it up into two neat packages. There's Christianity, and then there's everything else. And because I had been raised in the church, although I never paid any attention, and wasn't interested in the God of the Bible, I decided to look at the everything else first.
Yeah. And that surprises me. The only reason it surprises me is because you had such a godly mother, and you loved her so dearly. I would think you'd want to start by exploring your mother's faith rather than going jumping all through these hoops and looking at Buddhism and the Baha'i and everything that you looked at.
You would think so, and especially when all my life my mother was right about everything.
Of course, mothers always are.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just not the way I did it.
Okay. Again, the book is Heaven Without Her, and Kitty Foth-Regner had to go on a search to find out exactly what her mother believed so that she could, again, see her someday in eternity. Now, all right, we've already mentioned, you got to be a good person. That's a whole lot of religions are talking about that. But none of these other religions that you're poking around looking at studying for as long as 15 months, none of them talk about Jesus, of course. But you finally conclude, after quite a search on your own, an investigation, that biblical Christianity is really a major option here. And let's examine exactly why. I mean, first of all, and you've already alluded to some of it, but there's more I want to get to. You were very impressed that science, that the Bible actually confirms science, because you have a scientific arm yourself. Right.
During this whole period, it's not nearly as neat and clear-cut as I made it sound in my book. There were an awful lot of overlapping investigations going on. But so I had started reading the Bible kind of early on. I was reading the Quran too, though, and Science and Health. I had started volunteering in a nursing home, and I was one of the women I called on was a Christian Scientist, and so I was looking at that too. I mean, I was all over the place. But at any rate, as I was reading the Bible, I was also reading about the Bible, and I kept coming across references to its amazing scientific accuracy, which just struck me as a total oxymoron, because after all, we all know that Bible believers are flat earthers, right?
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
This is what I thought. And so, but then as I'm reading the Bible and as I'm looking into these alleged scientific facts, I'm just blown away, because they say things that were absolutely unknowable by writers 2,000 and 3,000 years ago and more. And in fact, many of them, these facts were not proven until recent centuries or even recent years. For instance, the Bible talks about the mountains and valleys of the deep, of the ocean floor. That, I believe, was proved in the 19th century. Until then, I think people just assumed that it was a flat floor. the Bible talks about the round earth. In the book of Isaiah, Isaiah wrote that